So it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Alexander. And, this is a really interesting opportunity to engage with all of your work and thinking. We've been in conversation broadly about, ideas related to living with viruses. And you've done a whole archive of work related to networks and rhizomes. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So I think without further ado, I'll just hand it over to you, and you can lead us through your work, and yeah, lead us to a discussion. And yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. The main subject is and the subject of my artwork in last 35 years is actually living with life. All forms of working or doing some collaborative works with nature, with communities, with the forest community, and my work is based on this rhizomorphic way of thinking. And I will try to explain a little bit how to deal with multi-species, let's say, subjects and the world and viruses and into community or into communities. Let's try to start. Okay. I very often, art from the beginning as anthropologists, you know very well that art is from the very beginning of human conscious start to communicate, to visualize, or to participate in every, let's say, natural everyday life. It's connection between human conscious and everything, what all forms of life and organisms around us and the web of life. And I try to do the same today, even after all those technologies and different approaches in contemporary art, but I very often call myself I'm a cave artist, but my cave is a street or something like that. But in the beginning, I would try to start with this my work. It's called like Hallelujah the Hill. Which is references to the one hill, only one hill near Zagreb, my hometown, and me and a lot of my friends, we every weekend we were on that hill, and I took photographs with autoclip, and but the rituals were based on different, let's say, anthropological artifacts, art and life, natural life in that surroundings. For example, I mentioned this particular work. It's called Bat Dance. Also, my surname is Battista, which means Battista. That means also is connected with that part of my personality. But I before Art Academy, I studied geology and natural sciences, and we actually in that same hill we were in caves, and those caves have some of the species of bat species, and that was for me was very strong, let's say, connection with this surrounding of the city. And after a couple of years, I start to work with that, and then we use the, let's say, nothing special, everything what we find in the space or in the forest, and just we make some choreographies connected with this animal rituals. Okay, well, this is another example of that, and I took around 5,000 photographs during this period, which during, let's say, almost 10 years, and it was always connected to some kind of life in the forest, and different species in the forest, with different species in the forest, and is some kind of let's say zone of connecting community and multi-species life. Also, it's another, let's say, way how I try to connect all those layers. This is Sava River. This is city of Zagreb, and up there is that mountain, Medvednica mountain, and Zagreb is not based on Zagreb city is not based on then on the water from the mountain, and I try to, let's say, make this conscious about this natural life in that mountain, and connections and those strong connections between mountain animals, all the species, and the city of Zagreb, and this connection is very strong, and I try to make this communication with the citizens of Zagreb. You will see after I have some other examples and ways how to communicate, let's say, multi-species world with the city and or with the human communities. Okay, this is some couple of another pictures of that, but that is bring us to another, let's say, chapter, which is rhizomatic system, because I'm not only interested in the rhizomatic system as let's say, physical or organizational or some kind of way of community. I'm also interested in rhizomatic way of thinking about time. Well, all you know very well the difference between principle or principle of rhizomatic on the right. Well, the same thing. That means that every form of life, every form of every concept of life is equal, and well, this is some kind of principle of thinking about multi-layered multi-species world. Well, those are a couple of let's say, natural forms of rhizomes, but I use these principles on my, let's say, on those my maps, mental maps, which are always okay. Those are on creation language, and you cannot understand, but you can see how I do or how I make all those my let's say models and thoughts in different works, and all each of these segments is let's say a rhizome of my works and collaborations with other people, and they are connected each other in some other to some exhibitions or some public events, everything which is actually connected with those subjects. And well, I also do this models which are not only rhizomatic, also models of cells, and those cells are also connected with some of principles of my works. Those are just as a choreography writings, but through the principle of rhizome and the cell, and the multiplication of the cells. Another principle of rhizomatic principles. And well, and this is now connection with another, let's say, chapter, which I call just a moment. Okay, I have another example. This is connection with the work Eben mentioned before, but in that case of working on network, I try to think about that network with connect with the concept of time, and now I'm working on this, how we can do on the network in a physical way, also on the time, on the concept of speculative way of thinking. Well, this is that another chapter, which was my work from, let's say, 10 years ago, about viruses let's say in human conscious, which was, let's say, far before crisis of coronavirus. But I started to make some sculptures and thought how we can communicate with community about something which people cannot see and is all the time among us. And I start with those sketches about this, and I still make the sculptures of those, let's say, huge big viruses in one hand in the principle of rhizome, in the other hand how to put the let's say this some kind of conscious of presence of viruses or something what we cannot see in the public space. And then I start to make another versions, and I try to make this example to see how the, let's say, model of, let's say, virus should change during this process, because the question of statics and the safety of the people, and this virus mutated in this very simple last example, and I start to this is a little bit, yeah? And I put them around the city, but as a toys in the different situations in the public space. You can see, well, that was 7 or 8 years ago, and they also then they can, the children can play with them. The people are also are connected with those sculptures, but it was some kind of social situation. I don't make sculptures. I'm not sculptor, but I use in this particular project on this systematic way how to put around the city 20 different sculptures, which are actually generated from the model of virus. Yes. I cannot. This is too big now. It's too big, and I cannot. That's not. Okay. Okay then. Well, those my let's say, because of that I said that the street is my cave, and those are my, let's say, artifacts to those invisible species which are actually here, but we cannot see them, but we have to communicate them. After that, we can see in the last 2 years how many consequences and bad consequences could have. For example, here. Okay, I'm now jumping on another let's say level, on another chapter, which is actually community itself. Why I'm showing this? It is in Zagreb was during coronavirus lockdown in the beginning of 2020. We had in the same moment we had earthquake, which means you have to be in your home, but in the same time your home is very dangerous to you. And well, for very important let's say moments of consciousness, that really people are just one species. And when in one moment you have, or on one level you have virus and the social panic around this virus and social distances, which is total disaster, and in the same moment you have also natural phenomenon, and it brings and put people in in very, let's say, in this state of fear. And we said, if we talk about nature, or about some natural processes, about multi-species world, the fear is actually the main enemy of thinking about integrity of all those layers. And I try to make all those how community can, let's say, communicate with this social and political state of making fear about the multi-species world, and fear about how we deal with some natural processes in the community. And I make this symbolic, let's say, installations with crosses, and which is also some kind of level of let's say Red Cross, International Red Cross write me a letter of let's say that is forbidden to use that kind of symbols. And it was you in the moment how the structures of power have these exclusive tools and exclusive way to make, let's say, and to pronounce when is something dangerous for people, where we can, how we can deal with making actually new levels of fear. And I tried to deal with this in the community. And I have to say that the whole media, whole prime time news channels, and everyone actually started to talk about that, about different levels of different consciousness about living with life, living with the natural processes, living with this multi-species world. And it's as humans also, we should start to think about ourselves that we are just one part of all this complex world. This is also this is my connections with community and the people, and trustness about all those layers. For me, it was very important moment when we start to help each other, and I think that in the action, when you actually people are actually the main fear of the people is there are another people. And you can imagine how fear is when you start to talk about multi-species world of different species, which are actually in the context of this coronavirus crisis, is even bigger. Well, that was my expose for discussion, my thoughts about how to deal with the community, how to make some situations of conscious, of invisible species to visible, to that, how we can put in public discourse that kind of things. on the one hand, on the rhizomatic way, another hand, using, let's say, art as a tool, as a platform, how we can communicate, not just visualize. Then is because is deep in deep structure of the society, and well, that's what I'm doing and trying to this my practices to share those my experiences.
Thank you so much, Alexander. This was a really lovely opportunity to see the archive of your work. There's so many rich things. And as per usual, if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, raise your hand to get my attention, or just type it in the chat. I thought I'd start off with one, just diving right into some of the core ideas. And, you know, since this is an interdisciplinary group that includes virologists, artists, you know, as well as anthropologists, media theorists, Fan Yang has just dropped by. Let's kind of open up this idea of the rhizome a little bit and maybe give it a little history. So, you know, this is an idea from Deleuze and Guattari. You contrasted the tree, which is that idea about kind of arboreal branching and descent from a common ancestor, commonly used in evolutionary theory. You had some images that were reminiscent of a cladogram, this way that you kind of illustrate the common origins of an ancestor. And then you juxtapose that with these tangled webs of interconnection. So I was really interested in, well, maybe to give a little background about the rhizome idea. You know, this is an idea from Deleuze and Guattari, not, you know, just thinking about the plant as you know, having these connections underground. They talked about ants as rhizomes, animal rhizomes that would connect things. If you try to disrupt them, the connections get reestablished. But also connections that they famously wrote as relevant to today, that rhizomes make us form, that viruses make us form rhizomes with other animals and other species. They were writing in the 80s when this was very new knowledge. So maybe if you could say a little bit more about your rhizomatic thinking, and also go into that idea about time, which is super interesting and generative. I haven't heard anyone mobilize the rhizome to think about time. There was that one graphic you showed us where I think the phrase was speculative historical parallel processes or something like that. So if you could just talk a little bit more about what you mean by, yeah, these overlapping ideas about rhizomes and time.
It's always is question. Well, my English is not so perfect, but I'm sure that you understand enough. Well, it's always time no, it's always matter of hierarchy, and also Deleuze and Guattari, they talk about hierarchies, about the structure of power, and it's how we perceive world around us. If you talk, okay, you have a king, you have the Pope, you have there, and you have all the system of tree under this or pyramid. Then when you make this contrast of rhizome, which is totally horizontal way, not vertical power, then we can also think about time not as a, you know, linear way of thinking, and not as a let's say hierarchical way. Well, this is past and this is the future. We can start to think about parallel times. You know what I mean? Not only linear. It's you also with any kind of power. You have also these tendencies to linear power. Time is also have this concept of linearity from past to the future. but why not think about parallel times? Why not? Well, each of us, we have our own time. And interconnections with different perception of time from the perception of the people, of course, but in the other hand, different concept of time and what was happened in the past, what was happening what will happen in the future. Maybe during this rhizomatic thinking, we can think about the future as a past. You know, all those. I'm excited with all those possibilities, and I'm recently working mostly on exactly on these concepts. And if we compare that with virus is, you know, now the people are in some kind of fear and dangers about and they're very disrupted with virus. Why this virus? Why we cannot be anymore you know, free to think, to work whatever we want to do it. And but this virus in time is much longer here than we are, you know, and this is also possibility through this concept, rhizomatic concept of time, that we can talk about that. Also using in schools, in the everyday life, in the media, you know, but of course it's huge process. But well, I am now working on that let's say platform of rhizomatic time that we can maybe use in the future as a model to perceive those multi-species world, different, not anthropomorphic state which we are in right now, you know, and those things I'm trying to think in this rhizomatic time concept.
Super smart, thank you. And we just so happen to have my favorite theorist of time in the room, Fan Yang, who's joining us from Baltimore, Maryland. So in the chat, Fan has said that she's got a question, so go for it.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, I was in another meeting that ran through 4:15, so I missed the beginning. I hope to learn more about your work, which looks really fascinating. Yeah, I love that question and response to the question on time. And I was kind of free associating with a number of things. One thing that came to mind, of course, was the short novel Beijing Folding, Beijing 折叠, which won the Hugo Award a few years ago by an author based in Beijing, China, that talks about this, I guess we can say, dystopian future where different people in the city of Beijing occupy different kinds of time, meaning that at one point during the day, the city would start to fold into a different kinds of time space where the occupants would then take on a different sense of time or are able to occupy different kinds of time. So it's a bit hard to explain. I'm not doing a very good job of it, but I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't looked at it. But one of the things that connects to COVID was most recently there were reportage of tracking of two individuals in Beijing, and one person who was middle class, upper middle class, and this person managed to do shopping and skiing and some facials and among other fancy things that upper middle class people in Beijing do. And then this other individual who is a migrant worker who has worked in all those 24 or 48 hours time frame. He worked nonstop from one place to another. So many people were connecting that to the Beijing folding story, and you can see why. So I just was associating with that in relation to thinking about the rhizomic notion of time, and that how unevenly distributed that might be. And then another free association is I'm teaching Race After Technology by Ruha Benjamin in my class right now, and the notion about African Americans, for example, or Black people have always kind of occupied the future already, given the longstanding experience that they might have regarding surveillance, for example, on slave ships. So again, it echoes what you said about the past in the future in some ways. And one last association that I had was the common now language that we describe COVID in terms of before times, which seems to repeat the linear conception. And I wonder if there's any artistic, playful way to subvert that. So just throwing out some associations there, but thank you so much for your talk and presentation.
Well, it's very, thank you because of those examples. Well, one way is this speculative thinking of those different layers, and another is actually how to perceive, let's say, rhizomatic time by our experience. I mentioned before that we had human being can perceive only one huge in one moment. Actually, I see only one huge crisis or something like that. And when I mentioned before that in the same moment when we had this coronavirus crisis, it was one time. And in the same moment, we have this earthquake, which is huge, another crisis. And you know, and I saw the people cannot believe it. They are totally disorientated. You know what I mean? And now how they connect those different separated crises, separated times, how to deal with that, you know, in the real moment, in the real time. Then you see, then you have to deal with some other, totally other levels. And it is not dystopian future or some dark past. It's, you know, the moment, 21st century right now, and you can feel total mess of time and space.
Yeah, I think that was the reason that I paused before I described the novel based in the dystopian future, and I don't believe that was actually the premise. It was just an alternative world, which allows us to think about what we occupy.
Thanks, Pan, and thanks for the lovely response, Aleksander. I've got a follow-up one, which in part relates to a question from my 6-year-old who asked me recently, you know, why do we have 12 hours in a day? Why are there 24, 60 seconds? And, you know, I think it opens up a way of thinking about perceiving time and understanding time and making sense of time. In the cladogram images that you showed, or sort of I don't know quite how to characterize it, but definitely it's cladograms becoming something else, I think is what you showed us. There's a pervasive sense of a molecular clock, and that's kind of how the lengths of the branches in a cladogram are calculated, their length and the branching points. And as you're thinking about these parallel temporalities in a multi-species frame, I'm wondering, yeah, how do we apprehend time? How do we apprehend the temporalities of others? Here I'm also thinking with Jim Clifford, who has a lovely piece in his book from 1997, Routes, on the historical consciousness and temporal consciousness of sea otters. And he characterizes it from this vantage point in California where there was a Russian fort and the sea otters paying attention to the tides, but also maybe perhaps having historical consciousness about the fur trade and the massive collapse of their populations and the massive collapse of the kelp forest as a result. So I'm wondering how to reckon with these parallel times or how you understand them. Is it possible to get past hours, minutes, years, and also the molecular clock as we enter these multi-species reckonings of time?
Well, those are actually examples why I think it's interesting to deal with that. But also is another level. It's question of value. What is the main value actually? What anything in this world has? Time. Not physical. It's time. You know what I mean. And it is connected also, of course, with the future, with the past, with the future, with the different species, different moleculars, and how water is actually part of this. Those processes. In the same moment, it's in this social, let's say, model of rhizomorphic thinking. Someone who is own our time, his own our lives, and then is question of working, question of labor, a question of free time. All those concepts of time are actually the main. Those are the main architectures of our lives, not our physical limits, then our limits in time. And because of that, I think it's very important to think about different concepts of time. And it's if we can compare multi-species concept of thinking connected with post-colonial, let's say, theory, you know what I mean. Well, this, when you put also the layers of time in those thoughts, then you have another step of this complex thinking about human history, but even more important about multi-species parallel, let's say, times and space.
I love that. Thank you. So there's a question in the chat from Rachel who had to go to a faculty meeting. So I'll just read it so that people can hear it on YouTube. So I love the rhizomes question. Good to see you. Thanks so much. I really love the touch, contact, play, and interaction with those virus sculptures you see in the photos and your incorporation of rhizomorphic connection as a concept in that series. Could you say more about how you are thinking and feeling and interpreting or reinterpreting that particular series of your work now? And are the sculptures still a part of the city? Finally, I wonder if you could tell us more about the Bat series and the underlying playfulness and performance involved in that.
Okay. Well, actually, maybe I can start with these Bat performances, which is actually my let's say older works and concepts. When I thought about species and life of the species and particular species in that surroundings, more as a, let's say, as a fact. I didn't thought about those you know, about different concepts of how they live, and I just you know, I just felt that that is something which is important, that is something that I want to communicate and transform to art forms, but not physical. It was really like dance. It is how we can communicate this, not but by the just by the facts. Well, this is animal, this is bat, but and usually we thought and we talk about bats, and the most of the photographs about bats are actually about physical presence of the bat, which is very statical, or they, you know, they sleep, or they eat something. But okay, we can by experience, only by experience, we can feel when they fly around us. And on that mountain, I had a lot of experiences of really flying. Well, that was for me very important choreography, multi-species choreography of one species. You know what I mean? And then I start to think about that as a dance, as a really choreography, and how we can also perceive a lot and rituals of different forms. I talk about different, you know, because it's not one simple, let's say, one organism. It's networks of organisms, it's swarms of organisms, which are actually dance each other to each other. I don't know how to explain. Well, that was my idea of this bat dance series, and this zone of connection with bat. Well, now I can see even more and more layers. We all see that connection that we can share viruses, different, I know, different other species between us. But well, in that moment, for me, was very important how to perceive different organisms and by the movement, not only by the picture. Well, that was my and for that, it's very important. You cannot see it. It is not like a classical dance. We did that when I was, of course, let's say some kind of director. That was my idea, but I collaborate with a lot of people. We did that during 10 or 15 years permanently. You know what I mean? Not, well, we have idea, we have this, and we are going, you know, we will show one show in one theater or something else. No, you have to have this process, this ritual, but not ritual which means 1 hour or half an hour or 2 hours. You have to have this ritual of years and years of and doing that. I think that the gesture is actually the main, the strongest thing about it. And then you can feel, then you can understand. Even more important that you can feel, not that you can only know about that. Is you have to feel that. Well, that's my, let's say, life or artistic mission. How to talk, how to communicate with people through the feelings, not to the knowledge of some things or different species, but through the feeling. They can feel that. That is very important. Well, that I see, that's my my, let's say, small role, how to deal with the feeling, to feel that, not only know about it.
Great. And so we have 5 minutes left. Also just wanted to bring back the part of Rachel's question about the sculptures of the virus, and also add, I love the colors of the viruses. I mean, so often they're rendered these days in these scary reds and, like, you know, looming colors. But I see Carla also has a question, so I'll let Carla ask the question.
Sorry, just super quick. Like, I love all this speculation, but what really speaks to me is this idea of doing it again and again as a practice over so many years with other people. And I'm just curious, like, how did it change? Like, how is that experience different after 5 years as opposed to the first year or the first time? Or, you know, I'd love to hear about that.
Exactly what I said before. The main change is happening in the feelings. You have, for example, knowledge, experience, understanding, communicative of understanding, and then you come to level of feeling. Also, you can hear my English is not so. It's on level of some knowledge and some, let's say, understanding, but I cannot feel English language. You know what I mean? Well, it's the same. You have to have this time to think about, to you know, that's the benefit of long time experience, long time. It's not like how now we, as a linear goal, how now we are here or here. It's more like go deeply, deep and deep. Well, that's that I can explain only on that way. It's,
I mean, I can imagine
time gives you, because time, you know, well, and because of, and when you, and the gesture of the value of gesture, value, not physical, it's value of life. When you use and spend your time on this planet, in your life, in some idea, as long they take and they last, it's more valuable. You know what I mean? It's the gesture.
Thank you.
And in 2 minutes, I've got another meeting starting on the hour, but just if you could update us on the public viral sculpture, because I think it's so timely right now.
Yeah, we spoke about this viral visualization, and you see that I thought about that, let's say 10 years ago, how to communicate something which is invisible and is here all the time. We can only we can talk about symptoms. Well, we are ill. We always go about symptoms of the humans. But I want to make this network of these viruses around the city, network as a rhizomatic network, with really colorful, people. It was so popular. I was, also all the media was all the time talk about that. Someone calls about those are mutants, those are beautiful creatures, different. But everyone talked about that. All the city is. It was well. I still have on couple of places. So you can have all the time on the main street, but it was everyone when I put this crosses on the buildings, everyone said, well, this is the same artist who make those viruses on the, you know, and that's people are really talking about that, and for me was important, and it's interesting also that my personal process. I started with really form of this viruses, you know, form as a sphere, but when you put some or want to put some on public space where children are playing, you know, they immediately jump on these extensions, and I just have to move and those extensions to be safe for the children, for the people, and this is my mutation of virus. You know what I mean? The social mutation of the virus. After that, the virus, let's say, had influence on our social life as a social distances. You know what I mean? And well, those are my, let's say, stimulations for doing that. You know, about conscience and connections and interconnections between all those species, concepts, and how to live with life.
Well, I love that project in particular, and the bat one as well, and all of your works. It's been a real pleasure to have this dialogue, Aleksander, and I hope you come back to a future iteration of the reading group. Thank you all for coming, and hope to see you all either in a Zoom room or in the real world sometime soon. Thanks.
Okay,
thanks,
thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Aleksander.
Bye.
Ciao.